What happens when a state wakes up and finds out that millions of dollars meant for road safety have suddenly vanished? Not because of a budget crisis, not because of a natural disaster, but because Washington decided to pull the plug. That's exactly what California says happened. And now the state is taking the Trump administration to court. This isn't just a legal fight. It's a battle over power, control, and who gets the final say when federal money is on the line. Let's break it all down. California has filed a lawsuit after the federal government terminated more than $33 million in transportation grants. These funds were supposed to support programs that keep highways safe, things like truck inspections, enforcement operations, and monitoring commercial drivers. According to California officials, these programs are essential. They help prevent accidents, keep unsafe trucks off the road, and protect everyday drivers. When that money was cut, the state says public safety was put at risk overnight, but the Trump administration argues it had a reason. The conflict centers on new federal transportation rules, especially around whether commercial truck drivers are sufficiently proficient in English. Federal officials say clear communication is critical for safety. Reading road signs, understanding law enforcement instructions, and responding in emergencies. Earlier this year, Washington tightened enforcement of these rules. The Department of Transportation claimed that California was not fully complying with the updated standards. Because of that, federal officials decided the state no longer qualified for certain grants. From the federal government's perspective, this wasn't punishment. It was enforcement. California strongly disagrees. State leaders say California already follows federal law and enforces English language standards for commercial drivers. They argue that the federal government abruptly changed expectations and then used funding as leverage to force compliance. California's Attorney General called the move unlawful and arbitrary. The state's lawsuit claims the federal government overstepped its authority and acted in a way that actually makes roads less safe by stripping funding from safety programs. In other words, California says Washington created the very risk it claims to be preventing. This lawsuit didn't come out of nowhere. California and the Trump administration have clashed repeatedly over immigration, environmental rules, healthcare, and federal oversight. Transportation policy is just the latest front in a long-running power struggle between a Democratic-led state and a Republican administration. What makes this case different is the tool being used: money. Federal transportation funding isn't optional. States rely on it to maintain infrastructure, enforce safety standards, and keep highways functioning. When that funding is threatened, the consequences ripple far beyond politics. Road repairs slow down, inspections get reduced, safety programs shrink, and that's why California says this isn't just a political disagreement, it's a public safety issue. Zooming out, this fight isn't only about California. On the very same day California filed its lawsuit, the federal government also threatened to withhold tens of millions of dollars from New York over similar transportation compliance issues. That's a signal. Washington isn't just targeting one state, it's sending a message to all of them. Comply with federal standards exactly as written, or risk losing funding. For many states, that's a scary precedent. Here's why this matters nationally. States have traditionally had flexibility in how they implement federal programs. But if courts allow the federal government to terminate funding over disputed interpretations of compliance, that balance of power could shift dramatically. Future administrations, Republican or Democrat, could use federal money to pressure states into adopting specific policies, even when those policies are controversial or politically divisive. That's why legal experts are watching this case closely. California is asking the court to block the federal action and restore the funding. The state argues that the Transportation Department cannot retroactively change requirements and then punish states for not meeting them instantly. The federal government hasn't backed down. It maintains that safety standards are non-negotiable and that states must comply fully to receive funding. Now the courts will decide who's right. This case will likely take months, possibly longer. But the outcome could shape how transportation funding works for years to come. If California wins, it could limit the federal government's ability to use funding as leverage. If California loses, other states may face similar enforcement actions, especially on issues tied to immigration and labor. Either way, this lawsuit goes far beyond one state and one set of grants. At its core, this story is about power. It's about who controls the rules of the road. It's about whether federal funding is a partnership or a pressure tool. And it's about how policy decisions made in Washington can directly affect drivers hundreds or thousands of miles away. For now, California is standing its ground, and the rest of the country is watching closely. Because the outcome of this legal battle could determine how far the federal government can go the next time it decides to tighten the screws.